Now we're going to talk about breaking and continuing in loops. So these are two kind of actions that you can do in loops. And they're a nice way to just manage your flow. So if you have different things in loops and you want to end, halfway in between or something, or halfway through, these are nice ways to manage that. So we'll just go through it and we'll see some examples, and then hopefully we'll understand it a lot better at the end. So let's just start off, and let's say we have a race and we have participants. And so what we're going to do is we're going to create a list with participants. And inside this list, we're going to just put the names of the participants. So we'll start off, and let's say our first participant is Jen. And then to indicate our second participant, so we'll put a comma to indicate that we're going to put a new element. Our second participant is going to be Alex. Our third participant, so another comma to indicate that we want to add a new element. Our third participant is going to be Tina. Then our fourth participant is going to be Joe. And our fifth and our last participant is going to be Ben. So we've created a variable called participants, and we've assigned it a value equal to a list containing the names of our participants. So in this case, Jen, Alex, Tina, Joe, and Ben. And so each of these participants are separated by a comma, so to indicate that they're different participants, or that they're different elements of the list. And what we're going to do is we're going to write a loop, and we're going to try to see which participant number Tina is. So what we're going to do is we're going to loop through a list, and we're going to count, and then when we reach Tina, we want to know what participant number she is. So let's say our participant numbers are organized. This is our first participant, Jen. Our second participant is Alex. Our third is Tina. Our fourth is Joe. And our fifth is Ben. So we want to go through this list, and we want to know which participant Tina is. So what we're going to do is we're going to just do a for loop. We're going to do a for loop. So we start with our keyword for to indicate that we want to start a for loop. And then we're going to write name is going to be our temporary variable. So for name in participants. So we remember the structure that we start with the keyword for. Then we have our temporary variable that's going to take on each of the individual values. And then our in keyword indicates what we're going to loop through. So in this case, we're going to loop through our list of participants. And what we're going to do is we're also going to create a counter, or rather, let's call this position. And so initially we'll give it the value 0. And what we're going to do, or what we're going to try to do, is we're going to see if the position that we're at right now is, if the name, or if the element in this position is equal to our name Tina. So what we're going to do is, if our name is equal to Tina, and then what we want to do is we want to know the position. So how are we going to do this? Well, what we're going to do is we're going to use the break statement. So we'll just write out the loop first, and then we'll go through it in detail and really understand it. So we're just going to put the break keyword here, and that means that we're going to stop the loop. So if our name is Tina, or if the name in the list is equal to Tina, then we're going to stop going through the list. Otherwise, we'll just increment our position by 1. And it may actually be smart if we start counting at 1 here, because we're not doing indices, but we're actually going to be looking at participant numbers. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, rather than their indices, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So what are we doing really? Well, we wrote a for loop. So for our temporary variable called name in the list that's saved in participants. So name is going to take on each of the elements one by one. So first it's going to be Jen, then Alex, then Tina, then Joe, and then Ben. And then each time we're going to check if the name is equal to Tina. And if it is, we're going to stop our loop, so we're going to break. Otherwise, we're going to increment our position and then go to the next name. So let's print out the position at the end. And let's run it, and then let's go through it in detail again. Oh, we forgot the if statement. So if our name is Tina, then we're going to break. So yeah, if we run it now it should work. So what we get here is we get the position 3. So 1, 2, 3. So yeah, that gives us the right answer, but why? Let's go through this code line by line, and let's go through the loop, and let's understand. So we start with a for loop, so with the keyword for, so for name and participant, so name is going to take on each of these values one by one, and it's going to start off with Jen. And we're going to go into this loop, and we're going to check if name is equal to Tina. Well, name is equal to Jen right now, so we don't do this. Then we go to the next line, and we increment our position by 1. Now name is going to take on Alex. And, well, is name equal to Tina? Well, Alex is not equal to Tina, so we're not going to do any of this. And we're just going to increment our position by 1. So now we're at 3. And now what we're going to do is, now we're going to take on the value Tina. So name is going to be Tina. Now if name is equal to Tina, well, name is equal to Tina. So we're going to enter this. And what we're doing here with this break is just that we're stopping the loop. So we're breaking out. We're saying, oh, you know, we reached what we wanted to reach, and now we don't want to continue doing the rest of this loop. So all we do is we just break, and what we do is we just skip to the end of the loop out here. And so the next thing we do is we just print position, and position is the last value of the position, which is 3. So if we, for example, put in a print function in here, what we're going to get is, if we just print out here about to break, and if we maybe print before the position about to increment, and we run this again, and then this will give us an even better understanding of what exactly is happening in this loop. So let's run this again, let's go through it again, and to make sure we really understand just what this break is doing. So what's happening? Well, we start with the participants here, and our position starts at 1. And then we start for name and participants. So name, the first value is going to be Jen. If name is equal to Tina, no, Jen is not equal to Tina. So we skip all of this, and we go here, and we print about to increment. And we increment our position by 1. So now it's 2. And now name takes on the second value, which is Alex, and we check if name is equal to Tina. Well, Alex is not equal to Tina, so we print. So we don't do any of this, so we skip this, and we print about to increment, and about to increment here. And then we add our position, so position is equal to position plus 1, and so the last value of position was 2, so position is equal to 2 plus 1, which is 3. And now name takes on the value Tina. And now we check if name is equal to Tina. Well, name is equal to Tina, so now we go in here, and now we print about to break, and then we reach the keyword break, which makes us go out of this loop. So now we go from here all the way outside here, and we skip all the rest, and we skip the rest of the loop, and the next thing we do is we print position. So let's look at this for another name maybe. Let's look at Alex. So let's try to see what position Alex is at. And if we run this, well, then we get 2. So let's go through it. For name and participant, so we start at Jen. If name is equal to Alex, it's not. We skip all of this. We go here, and we print we're about to increment, as we see here. And then we increment our position by 1. So position is equal to 1 plus 1, which is 2. And now name takes on the value Alex. Well, if name is equal to Alex, well, it is. Alex is equal to Alex. So we enter this statement, and we print about to break. And then we reach our break right here, and that makes us go all the way out of the loop, and now we're out of the loop, and now we print the position, which is 2. So Nice. So this is kind of one of the ways that we could find the position of the participants. We can try a different way just to see a different variant of it, and we're going to use a counter. So we'll use our counter, and we'll start, or let's call the counter index instead to make it a bit more clear. And let's just comment all of this out so that we don't have the printing from before. And what we're going to do is we're going to go through this list, but in terms of indices now, rather than going through it element by element. So rather than accessing the elements individually, we'll use the indices, but we're going to try to achieve the same thing that we did up here. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with our for loop, and then we're going to do for I. So this is just our temporary variable, or we can call it for current index. Now we want to go in a range, so we're going to use our in range, and we want to go inside a certain range. So we start our for loop, and our temporary variable is the current index, and then we're going to go through a range, and we want the range to be the length of our list of participants. So what this len does is it finds the length of the participants, or the number of elements inside this list. So what the length function does is it looks at the variable inside and it sees how long it is, and in terms of lists it tells you how many elements are inside. So in this case, the length of the participants is the length of this list. So how many elements are inside this list? Well, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So length of participants technically is equal to 5, but we'll just keep it like this to be able to deal with the fact that maybe someone wrote an additional name up here. So we'll just make it a bit more general so that we're going to use the length of the participants here. And so the syntax is, again, you just type in len, and then you put braces around, and then you put in the value that you want to find the length of. And then to complete our for loop, or to start it, we're going to put our colon, and then we're going to see, and now what we're going to check is, well, let's check for Joe this time. So let's check if our name is equal to Joe. So what do we need to check? Well, we need to check if the participants, and from there, the current index. So the current index that we have, so we start at 0, since we're in range from 0 to the number of elements in the list participants. And so what we do is we access the participants element by element, but in form of index. So for example, we would start at 0. Now if participants, and then the current index would be 0. So if participants 0, so if the first element of participants, which is Jen, is equal to, and we want to find Joe, then what we want to do is, well, let's just break, and otherwise we do nothing. So what we can actually do is we don't need this. We can take this away. And then what we're going to do in the end is we're just going to print our current index. And don't worry, we'll go through all of this in a lot of detail in a second. Let's just write it first. Let's run it, and then let's really go through it and understand it. So we're going to print the current index. And so the nice thing, for example, about for loops is that these variables, once you create them, you can actually still use them later. So this value doesn't go away. It just maintains the last value that it had. But what we're doing now is, rather than what we had up here, that our name was actually a string, so Jen, Alex, Tina, Joe, or Ben, for example, our index, because it's in a range of numbers, is actually going to be a number directly. So we don't need this position here, or this counting variable, but we have a number directly from the index. So let's run this, let's see what we get, and let's understand why we got that. So, well, we got 3. Now, wait a minute. That's weird. Why did we get 3? 3 would correspond to Tina if that was the position like we had up here. Well, we have to remember that we're starting to count at 0 here, and this is the index, and so the index of Joe is actually 3. So we go 0, 1, 2, 3. So the index of Joe, and that's why we also called it the current index, is 3. But the position of Joe is 4. So if we want to go in position, we actually have to increment it by 1, since when programming we start counting at 0, so 0, 1, 2, 3. But if we want the actual position, we have to start counting at 1, so 1, 2, 3, 4. And so the index and the position are just changed by a value of 1. So if we want the index like we had it here, we get 3, but if we want the position, which we actually do, we have to add 1 to it. So let's run it again, let's go through it, and let's understand it. So we start off with, and well, now thankfully we also get the right number. So we start off with our for loop, and now for our temporary variable current index, in the range starting at 0, so we remember that the range function, if we don't write anything else, we assume by default that we start at 0 and that we go in steps of 1. So in the range from 0 to the length of the participants, so the number of elements in the participants, which is 5. So in the range 0 going up to but not including 5 in steps of 1. So since we put nothing here, the default step size is 1. We do the following. We check if participants and the current index that we have. So what we're doing is we're accessing an element. So if we remember from lists, if we do, for example, participants 0, we're accessing the element with the index 0, for example. So in this case, we would be accessing Jen. And so that's what we're doing here, just more in a more general term. So we're letting our current index go through all of the index numbers, and we're checking this one by one. So in our first case, we would start off at the value 0, and we would check if participants, and then current index would have the value 0, is equal to Joe. Well, participants 0 would be Jen. So the first element in participants is Jen. Is equal to Joe. Well, it's not, so we don't do any of this. And so we go to the next part of our loop. So current index now has the value 1. Now we check again. If participants and current index has the value 1, so if participants 1 is equal to Joe, well, participants with the index and the element with index 1 is Alex, and Alex is not equal to Joe, so we don't do anything again. Now current index takes on the value 2, and then we check again if the element with index 2 is equal to Joe. Well, the element with index 2 is Tina, so it's not equal to Joe, so we don't do anything. And now we check again if the element, or our index is going to be 3, and then we check if the element with index 3, which is Joe, is equal to Joe. Well, then we break. So the element with index 3, 0, 1, 2, 3, is Joe. And so we break, and we go to the end, and we directly print our current index. So maybe if we also put into the loop, if we just print out our current index, we can also follow this a little bit nicer. So if we print out the current index before the if statement, and if afterwards, let's say we print out not breaked, and inside this if statement we print out have breaked, and then let's run this again, and then we can really get a really nice overview of what exactly is going on. So let's see. Well, we start at 0, and we print our current index, so we get 0. We check if participant 0 is equal to Joe, so the element with index 0, so this Jen. So Jen is not equal to Joe. We skip this, and we print not breaked up here. Then current index takes on the next value, which is 1. We print it. We check if the element with index 1 is equal to Joe. Alex is not Joe, so we skip this. We print not breaked. Do the same thing, and our index takes on the next value, which is 2. We check if participants, if the element with index 2, which is Tina, is equal to Joe, which is not. So we skip all of this, or we skip this, and we print not breaked. Now we take on the value 3, and we print 3 like we have here. We check if the participants with index 3 is equal to Joe. So the element in participants with index 3 is Joe. So 0, 1, 2, 3. And so now we go inside here and we print have breaked, and then we break, and then we go outside of this loop, and then we print the current index, which is still 3 from here, plus 1. And so we get 4. And so now we've seen kind of 2 different ways to use the break function. And we did it in 2 different ways. So once we went through the list element by element, and the other time we went through the list using indices. Now we've kind of seen the break function in action. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to look at the continue statement. So it kind of does the exact opposite of the break function in some sense. So what we're going to do is we're just going to make, we're just going to go through the range from 0 to 10. And if our number is divisible by 3, we're going to print it out. And otherwise, we're not going to print it out. And we're going to try to do this not using else statements, just to kind of see the principle of the continue statement. So what we're going to do is we're going to make another for loop. What we're going to do is we're going to do for, and our temporary variable is just going to be called number. So for number in the range 10, so starting at 0, going up to but not including 10, and default steps of 1. So if I just put in the 1 number here, that means that our default starting value is 0. Or we go up to but not including the number I put in here, so up to but not including 10, so we end at 9. And our default step size is 1. So for number in range 10, and now we check, is our number divisible by 3? So if number and then the modulus, so if the remainder of dividing the number by 3, that's what the modulus does, is equal to 0 or is equivalent to 0. So what we're checking here is if we divide a number by 3, do we have a remainder? And if not, let's print number, and then let's print divisible by 3. Oops, 3. And then we're going to put the continue statement. And we'll see what that does in a second. And then here, let's just print not divisible by 3. And let's just run this first, and then let's just go through it step by step again to really understand what this continue does. So what do we get? Well, so we start off with our for loop for number in range from 0 to 10 in steps of 1. So number starts at 0. We do the following. We check if we divide our number by 3, do we have a remainder? So 0 divided by 3, well, we have no remainder, so we get 0. And we print the number, so we print 0. And then we print divisible by 3. And now what we do is we continue. So what we do with the continue, it means that we skip the rest and we just start the next loop, or we just start the next part of the loop. Well, it may actually be helpful for us to see the numbers here too. So let's put the number here, or else this may be a bit confusing. Let's run it again, and then let's go through it. So, well, we just had, so we start at 0. We check if 0 is divisible by 3, and if there's a remainder, and there is no remainder. So we print our 0, and then we print divisible by 3, what we see here. And now we continue, which means we skip the rest of the loop, and we start with the next part. So now number takes on the value 1. And we see that we don't print number and not divisible by 3 yet. We'll print it in a second. So we're in the next part of the loop now. And now we take on the value 1. And we print, now we print our, so we check first if is number divisible by 3 or is the remainder. So if we divide 1 by 3, the remainder is 1. And so it's not divisible by 3, so we skip all of this. And now we print our number, which is 1. and now we print not divisible by 3. And so now we go to the next part of our loop, and our number takes on the value 2. And now we check, is 2 divisible by 3, or is there a remainder? So 2 dividing by 3, the remainder is 2. So we don't go into any of this, so we skip all of this, because the remainder of 2 divided by 3 is not 0. And so we print out 2, and we print out not divisible by 3. And now our number takes on the next value, which is 3, and we check, if we divide 3 by 3, what is the remainder? Well, 3 by 3 fits in perfectly, so our remainder is 0, which means we go inside here, we print 3, we print divisible by 3, and we continue with the next part of the loop. So now number takes on 4. So we don't print 3 again here, as we can see. We just go directly to the next part of the loop. And so we kind of skip the rest and just continue again. And so now number takes on 4 without having done any of this. And now we check, is 4 divisible by 3 exactly? So the remainder of dividing 4 by 3 is 1. So 4 by 3, we can fit 3 in once, and then there's still a remainder of 1. So we have a remainder of 1. So we skip all of this, and then we print out 4, and we print out not divisible by 3. And then we do the same thing with 5 again, and well, 5 is not divisible by 3 exactly, so we print out 5 and not divisible by 5, and now we have 6. And now 6 is exactly divisible by 3. 3 fits in exactly twice. So we go inside here again, and we print 6, and we print divisible by 3, and we continue. So so we skip the rest of the loop, and our number takes on 7. So we don't see 6 being printed here again. So what's really happening is the continue just, we skip the rest of the loop, and we just continue with the next part. So now we've printed out 6, and we said divisible by 3, and now number takes on the value 7. Now 3 doesn't fit exactly into 7, so we print 7 and not divisible by 3, and then we take on the value 8, and then 8 isn't exactly divisible by 3, so we do print out 8 and not divisible by 3, and now we have the value 9, and we print out, since 9 is exactly divisible by 3, so 3 fits in 3 times into 9, we print out 9, we print out divisible by 3, and we can continue to the next part of the loop. Well, the next part of the loop is that our loop is done. And so what we do is, with this last statement, if we continue and we're at the end of the loop, we just finish the loop. We don't do the rest. So we don't see any more print statements here either. Yeah, so here we've gotten a very nice kind of overview of what the break function does. We found 2 ways to use it to find the position of a name in our list of participants. And we've also seen what the continue statement does. So the continue just, you skip the rest of the list, the loop, and you just move on to the next part, as we've seen here. And the break, you just break out of the loop completely. So you stop whatever you're doing, you stop where you're at right now, and you just go to the next line after the loop. So we skip all the loop and all the rest, and we just go to the next part right after the loop. Yeah, so break and continue are also 2 really nice things that you can really use to make your flow inside loops a lot nicer, so that you don't have to think of different conditions or put in a lot of different statements, that you can just use, oh, once this happened, I just want to move on to the next part of the loop. Or once I found what I'm looking for, I don't want to go through the last loop. So like, what if you have a million numbers and the number that you're looking for is the 3rd number, or you have a million names and the name that you're looking for is the 5th name or something? You don't want to go through the rest of those names. You just want to finish your loop. You want to say, oh, my name's in 5th position, and I don't want to do the rest because that's a lot of time wasted. I found what I'm looking for, and that's all I need. So I just break out, and I continue with my code after that.